My mother-in-law dragged my suitcase down the front steps by one handle, letting the wheels bang against the ice like she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. "You are not starting another year under my roof," she said, and my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was standing behind me in her sparkly silver New Year's dress, shaking so hard the sequins trembled. My husband, Evan, stood in the doorway with his hands in the pockets of the sweater I had bought him for Christmas, staring at the porch light instead of at me. When I said, "Are you really going to let her do this?" he swallowed once and said nothing. My name is Natalie Mercer. I'm 33 years old. By midnight, I was at my father's door with my child half asleep against my chest, and what he pulled from the family safe made me realize Evan's silence had never been weakness. It had been strategy. The worst part was how neat everything looked. The snow was clean. The street was quiet. Somewhere down the block, people were already laughing over champagne, waiting for the countdown. And there I was on the walkway of a house I had helped decorate for the holidays, picking up my daughter's purple mittens from the snow while my mother-in-law, Patricia Vale, stood in the doorway like a queen dismissing a servant. She had packed our things herself, not carefully. Not even completely. A trash bag with Lily's pajamas. My work laptop shoved into a tote with a bottle of shampoo leaking over the charger. One boot of mine, not two. A framed photo from our wedding wrapped in a dish towel cracked straight through Evan's face. "Patricia," I said, keeping my voice low because Lily was behind me. "It's 18 degrees. She tilted her head. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before embarrassing this family." Embarrassing. That was the word she used because I had refused to apologize at dinner. 2 hours earlier, we had been sitting around Patricia's dining table under a chandelier wrapped in gold ribbon. Her crystal glasses were out, her white plates, her tiny handwritten place cards, though she had put mine at the very end, closest to the kitchen, like I was staff who had wandered into the wrong chair. Evan's younger sister, Marissa, had been telling everyone that I didn't understand loyalty, because I wouldn't transfer $5,000 from our savings to cover her failed boutique's rent. Our savings. Money I had earned freelancing after Lily went to sleep. Money I had set aside for a deposit on an apartment, because living with Patricia after Evan's layoff was supposed to be temporary. 6 months, he had said. It had been 14. When Marissa laughed and said, "Natalie acts like she's the man of the house because she pays a few bills," everyone went quiet. Not offended. Waiting to see if I would swallow it. I looked at Evan. He looked down at his plate. So I said calmly, "I pay all the bills." The room changed after that. Patricia's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Evan's father, Graham, cleared his throat and reached for his drink. Marissa's smile thinned, and Evan whispered, "Not now." But it was always, "Not now." Not when Patricia opened our mail. Not when she told Lily that real Mercers don't cry. Not when Marissa borrowed my car and returned it with an empty tank and a new scratch across the bumper. Not when Evan promised me he would speak to them and then came back saying, "Just keep the peace until we're back on our feet." So when Patricia said, "A wife who humiliates her husband in his mother's home doesn't belong here," I pushed my chair back and said, "Then we'll leave in the morning." She smiled. "No," she said, "you'll leave now." And Evan let her. That was the part my mind kept circling as I buckled Lily into the back seat with numb fingers. He didn't scream. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look ashamed in a way I could hold on to later. He just stood there while his mother threw our bags into the snow. At my father's house, the porch light came on before I reached the steps. Walter Mercer opened the door in flannel pajama pants and an old navy sweatshirt, his gray hair flattened on one side from sleep. He didn't ask why I was there. He saw Lily's bare knees under her dress, saw the trash bags in my hands, saw my face. Then he stepped aside and said, "Bring my granddaughter inside." I got Lily wrapped in a quilt on the couch. My father made tea he knew I wouldn't drink. I told him everything without crying, because if I started, I wasn't sure I would stop. When I finished, he sat very still, Then he said, "Did Evan say anything when she put you out?" I shook my head. My father stood, walked to his study, and opened the family safe behind the old watercolor of Cape Cod. I had seen him open it maybe twice in my life. He came back holding one sealed envelope. My name was written on the front, not in his handwriting, in Evan's. My father placed it in my lap and said, "Call him now." I stared at the envelope until the letters blurred. Natalie. Evan's handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp N, narrow T, the Y dipping too low like he'd changed his mind halfway through writing it. "How do you have this?" I asked. My father didn't sit down. He stood near the fireplace with his arms folded, his face carved into something I hadn't seen since my mother died. "Evan brought it to me 8 months ago." The room seemed to tilt. 8 months ago, Evan had still been telling me we were almost out of Patricia's house. 8 months ago, he had kissed my forehead and promised me he was applying everywhere. 8 months ago, I had still believed my husband was ashamed, not secretive. "What do you mean he brought it to you?" Dad looked toward the hallway where Lily was sleeping under 3 quilts. Then he lowered his voice. He said if you ever showed up here after being forced out of that house, I was to give you this, and then I was to make you call him before opening it. My throat went dry. He knew? That's what I intend to find out. The anger that had been holding me upright suddenly found a new target. Not Patricia, not Marissa. Evan. He had predicted this, planned for this, left instructions like I was a package that might be delivered in bad weather. I pulled out my phone with fingers that still burned from the cold. There were 9 missed calls from Evan, all after we left. No texts, of course. My father watched as I pressed his name. Evan answered before the first ring finished. "Natalie?" His voice broke on my name, and I hated that some small, stupid part of me reacted to it. "Why does my father have a letter from you?" Silence. Not surprise, not confusion, just silence. Then he said very quietly, "Are you and Lily safe?" "Don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't ask me that like you didn't stand there and watch your mother put us out in the snow." I had to. My father's eyes narrowed. I laughed once, hard and ugly. "You had to. Natalie, listen to me. Is your dad there?" "Yes." "Put me on speaker." "No. Please." That word almost undid me, because Evan rarely said please unless he meant it. I put him on speaker and set the phone on the coffee table like it was something contaminated. My father said, "You've got 10 seconds." Evan exhaled. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for taking them in." "Wrong start," Dad said. Another silence. Then Evan said, "Open the envelope, Nat." I tore it open before I could hesitate. Inside were 3 things. A key, a cashier's check made out to me for $38,000, and a folded stack of printed documents bound with a paper clip. At the top of the first page was a lease agreement for an apartment downtown. My name was already listed as tenant. Lily's school district was highlighted. Move-in date, January 2nd. My hands started shaking. "What is this?" I whispered. "Our way out," Evan said. I looked at the check again. $38,000. More money than Evan and I had ever managed to keep in one place. "Where did you get this?" "I sold the motorcycle, the watch my grandfather left me, my half of the lake lot before my mother could stop it. And I took every freelance contract I could under Marissa's company name so Patricia wouldn't know." My father moved closer to the table. "Why hide it from Natalie?" he asked. "Because my mother was checking everything," Evan said. "Bank alerts, mail, my phone when I slept. She had Graham watching the joint account. Every time Natalie and I got close to leaving, something happened. A car repair, a medical bill, Marissa needing rent. It wasn't bad luck." I thought of the nail in my tire. The lost daycare receipt. The notice from the bank I never received. My stomach turned. "You should have told me," I said. I know. No, you don't get to make secret escape plans and call it protection. I wasn't protecting you from the truth, he said. I was protecting the proof. The document slid in my lap as I unfolded the next page. Screenshots, bank transfers, emails, a photo of Patricia's hand holding my debit card. And then I saw the last page, a custody petition filed by Patricia Vale against me. My father picked it up before it hit the floor. Evan's voice came through the speaker, low and urgent. Natalie, my mother wasn't throwing you out tonight to punish you. She was trying to make you look unstable before court opens Tuesday. For a second, I couldn't hear anything but the blood rushing in my ears. Custody petition. Patricia Vale, who corrected Lily's posture at breakfast and told her hugs made children needy, had filed papers to take my daughter from me. My father read faster than I could. His jaw tightened line by line. She's alleging neglect, he said. Financial instability, emotional volatility. He looked up. And abandonment of the marital residence. I grabbed the page. There it was. Petitioner believes minor child is unsafe in mother's care due to respondent's erratic behavior and inability to maintain housing. Unable to maintain housing. I saw Patricia on the porch again, tossing Lily's pajamas into the snow. She created the reason, I whispered. Yes, Evan said, and she needed witnesses. Tonight gave her Marissa, Graham, and half the neighbors hearing a domestic incident on New Year's Eve. My father's voice went deadly calm. And where were you in this little performance, Evan? I recorded it. The room froze. What? I said. I had my phone in my sweater pocket, video on from the moment my mother told you to apologize. My hand flew to my mouth. All of it? Dad asked. All of it. Marissa saying Natalie should be grateful. My mother admitting the house was temporary. The part where Natalie said we'd leave in the morning. And my mother saying, no, you'll leave now. And you standing there mute, I said. Yes. The word landed hard. Evan didn't defend himself. That made it worse. I needed her to believe I was still under her thumb, he said. If I argued, she would stop. If I left with you, she would switch tactics and hide the petition until the emergency hearing. Emergency hearing? My voice cracked. Tuesday morning. Her attorney requested temporary guardianship. I turned toward the hallway where Lily slept, one arm thrown over the quilt, her hair still damp from melted snow. My baby had been dancing to holiday music 3 hours ago. Patricia had been smiling at her across the table. I stood so fast the papers scattered. I'm going back. My father caught my wrist. No. She has Lily's birth certificate, her medicine, her winter coat. Natalie, Evan said, do not go back there. I rounded on the phone. You don't get to tell me what to do from inside that house. I'm not inside. That stopped me. Where are you? In my car. 2 streets from your dad's place. My father went to the window and moved the curtain an inch. After a moment, he said, blue sedan under the maple. Yes, sir. My anger twisted into confusion. Why didn't you come to the door? Because if my mother had someone follow me, I couldn't lead them to Lily. My father dropped the curtain. I hated that it made sense. I hated that I still wanted to see him. Dad picked up the envelope and shook out the key. This apartment, is it real? Yes, paid through 6 months. Utilities start tomorrow. The landlord is expecting Natalie's call. And your name? Not on it. My father looked at me. Good. That single word hurt more than I expected. Evan heard it too. I know what you think of me. No, Dad said, you don't. Fair. There was a long silence. Then Evan said, Nat, I have more. Copies of texts from my mother to Marissa about making you snap. A voicemail where she says Lily belongs with Vales, not Mercer's. Bank records showing Graham moved money from our savings after I gave him access during the layoff. My stomach clenched. How much? Almost $11,000. I closed my eyes. That had been Lily's emergency fund. Our first month, last month, security deposit, My escape route stolen while I was cooking their dinners and folding their towels. My father took the phone off speaker and held it close. "Bring everything here. Now." "No," Evan said. "Not yet." Dad's eyebrows lifted. Evan continued, "If I walk in, this becomes a family dispute. Patricia will say Natalie and I plan to defraud them. She'll say the recording was provoked." "What do you suggest?" Dad asked. "Call Daniel Reese." My father went still. I knew that name. Daniel Reese had been my mother's attorney during the lawsuit that nearly took our house when I was 16. Calm man, expensive suit, terrifying smile. Dad looked at the safe, then at me. Evan said, "Mr. Mercer, the second that courthouse opens, Patricia will try to take Lily. We need Daniel tonight." My father was already reaching for his phone, but before he dialed, mine buzzed on the table. A text from Patricia. "Bring Lily back before midnight, or I call the police and report you for kidnapping." I read the message 3 times, hoping it would become less insane. "Bring Lily back before midnight, or I call the police and report you for kidnapping." My father took the phone from my hand and photographed the screen with his own. "Do not answer," he said. My phone buzzed again, a photo this time. Lily's pink winter coat laid across Patricia's dining table. Beside it were her asthma inhaler, her birth certificate, and the stuffed rabbit she'd slept with since she was 2. Then another message. "A good mother doesn't forget essentials." My knees went weak. Evan's voice came through the speaker. "What did she send?" Dad told him. For the first time that night, I heard something break in Evan. "That witch," he whispered. My father was already dialing. "Daniel, Walter Mercer. I'm sorry about the hour. I need you awake." He walked into the kitchen, speaking in short, controlled sentences. Custody petition, manufactured eviction, minor child, threatening texts, evidence preserved. I sank onto the couch beside Lily and touched her forehead. She stirred, lashes fluttering. "Mommy? I'm here, baby." "Are we in trouble?" The question gutted me. "No," I said, smoothing her hair. "Grandpa's house is safe." She nodded, still half asleep. "Daddy didn't come." I had no answer for that. The front door opened 20 minutes later, and my father stepped onto the porch before Evan could knock. I watched from the living room window as they faced each other under the yellow light. Evan looked awful. No coat, snow in his hair, his face pale, eyes red, one cheek marked like someone had slapped him. My father didn't move aside. "Give me the drive," Dad said. Evan handed him a small black case. "All copies?" Dad asked. 3, 1 cloud upload scheduled to Daniel Reese's office email at 6 a.m., 1 physical drive, 1 with a friend Patricia doesn't know. "Smart," Dad said. It did not sound like praise. Evan looked past him toward the window and saw me. His face crumpled for half a second before he forced it still. Dad finally let him in. He stayed by the door like he knew he no longer had the right to cross the room. "Natalie," he said. I stood. "Did she hit you?" His hand lifted toward his cheek, then dropped. "Marissa did, when I said I was leaving." "You're leaving now?" "I was always leaving tonight." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Convenient timing. "I know." "No, Evan, you don't get to know. You let our daughter believe you abandoned her." His eyes filled. That is the one thing I don't know how to fix. The anger in me wanted to stay pure, clean, simple. But then Lily woke fully, sat up, and saw him. "Daddy?" Evan made a sound like he'd been punched. He looked at me first, asking permission without words. I hated him for that too. But Lily was already reaching. He crossed the room and dropped to his knees beside the couch. She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Why didn't you come?" she whispered. He closed his eyes. "Because I made a bad choice trying to stop something worse," he said. "And I'm so sorry." My father returned with his laptop open and Daniel Reese on video call, wearing a robe over a dress shirt as if he'd been born prepared for emergencies. "Mrs. Vale texted a kidnapping threat?" Daniel asked. Dad forwarded the screenshots. Daniel's expression did not change, which somehow made him scarier. "Good," he said. "She panicked." "Good," I repeated. She threatened a legal parent with police action while withholding the child's medication and documents. That helps us." His eyes shifted to Evan. "You recorded the eviction?" "Yes." "Send it now. Do not edit. Do not summarize." Evan plugged the drive into Dad's laptop. A minute later, Patricia's voice filled the room. "You are not starting another year under my roof." On screen, I watched myself standing in the snow, watched Lily shiver, watched Evan standing silent. Then Daniel paused the video. "Mr. Vale," he said to Evan, "tomorrow you will sign an affidavit stating you witnessed your mother forcibly remove your wife and child from temporary housing in freezing conditions." "Yes." "And you will disclose your family's financial interference." "Yes." "And you understand this may expose your father and sister to civil liability." Evan looked at me. "Yes." Before Daniel could continue, headlights swept across the curtains. A car door slammed. Then Patricia's voice rang from the front yard. "Natalie, I know you're in there. Bring me my granddaughter before I have you arrested." My father didn't let Patricia finish her second shout. He opened the front door just wide enough for his voice to carry. "Patricia, you are on private property. Leave now." She stood in the snow in a fur-trimmed coat, holding Lily's pink jacket like a trophy. Graham was behind her, pale and silent. Marissa sat in the passenger seat filming with her phone. Patricia smiled when she saw Evan over Dad's shoulder. "There you are. Tell your wife to stop this nonsense." Evan stepped forward. For one wild second, I thought he might shrink again. Instead, he said, "No." Patricia blinked. Evan's voice shook, but he kept going. "You threw my wife and child into the cold. You stole from us. You filed to take Lily after creating the emergency yourself. It's over." Her face twisted. "You ungrateful little—" Daniel Reese's voice came from my father's laptop on the hall table, sharp and clear. "Mrs. Vale, this is Daniel Reese, attorney for Natalie Mercer. Your threats, your presence here, and your withholding of the child's medication are being documented. The police have been called." Patricia's mouth opened. For once, nothing came out. The police arrived 8 minutes later. Patricia tried charm first, then tears, then fury. She said I was unstable. She said Evan was confused. She said my father had always hated her family. Then one officer asked why she had a child's inhaler in her handbag if the child was supposedly unsafe with me. That was when her story started bleeding. By 3 a.m, Lily's coat, medicine, documents, and rabbit were inside my father's house. Patricia was warned off the property. Daniel had filed an emergency response before sunrise. Tuesday morning, Patricia walked into court wearing pearls and confidence. She left without either. The judge denied her petition in under 15 minutes after watching the porch video. Then Daniel presented the texts, the bank records, and Evan's affidavit. Graham stared at the table. Marissa cried. Patricia kept whispering, "This is family business," until the judge told her that endangering a child was not family business. We got a temporary protective order that day. Later, it became permanent. Graham repaid the stolen money to avoid charges. Marissa's boutique closed by February. Patricia tried to send Lily birthday gifts through neighbors, through cousins, through school. Everyone came back unopened. As for Evan, he moved into a studio across town, not with us. That was my condition. I needed to know who I was when I wasn't waiting for him to choose me in public. He went to therapy, alone first, then with me. He sat through every ugly question I had. Why didn't you warn me? Why did you let Lily hurt? Why was your plan worth my trust? Sometimes his answers helped. Sometimes they didn't. But he never once blamed me for asking. 6 months later, Lily and I were in our apartment downtown, the one from the envelope. It had yellow curtains, a crooked bookshelf, and a balcony just big enough for 2 chairs and a pot of basil. Evan came for dinner on Sundays. He knocked every time. He waited to be invited in. One evening in June, Lily fell asleep on the couch, between us, her rabbit tucked under her chin. Evan reached for my hand, then stopped halfway. I looked at his hand, then at him. And slowly, I took it. Not because everything was fixed, because truth had finally entered the room, and this time, nobody was standing silent in the doorway. A year after that night, we spent New Year's Eve at my father's house. At midnight, Lily ran outside in her pink coat, laughing as snowflakes caught in her hair. Evan stood beside me on the porch, our shoulders touching, while Dad lit sparklers in the driveway like tiny stars. I watched my daughter write her name in light against the dark, safe and warm and free. And I thought of that sealed envelope, how it hadn't saved my marriage, it had saved my eyes. Because sometimes the door that slams behind you is the first honest sound you've heard in years. If you were me that night, standing in the snow with your child while your husband said nothing, would you have opened that envelope or walked away forever? If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.